pretty much soon after college, I got hired on Apocalypse Now to do sound. I worked on that for
Wait a
2
minute.
years.
Wait, how are we just hearing Apocalypse Now at this point in the conversation?
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. We're Gary Steve and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week on My SNL Story, Brad, you tracked down Andy Aaron.
I did. I found him.
This is great. So we saw Andy in the episode the other day, the Burt Reynolds episode where his short film Street Scene played. This is great that we actually get to talk to him and find out more about his films.
Yeah, if you've listened to the Burt Reynolds episode already, you know it was the one thing we actually really liked in that episode, and we commented on how it was very similar to a piece we really liked in Mr. Mike's Mondo video. And so, yeah, we were able to track Andy Aaron down, and he was nice enough to talk with us. We should say, before you listen, you should go watch his films. There's 6 short films. They're very short. It'll take about 20 minutes because they're all visual audio gags, and we talk about specifics a lot, and you're really going to want to know what we're referencing. So take a quick minute, go to YouTube. It's called Andy Aaron Disaster Films. And not only do I recommend watching them, watch them in a particular order, because as we talk about in our discussion, these 6 films kind of have an arc, or they evolve from one to another. So the first one you probably want to watch is Armageddon, which is, we talked about, that's the short film that was in Mr. Mike Mondo's video. The second one is called Street Scene, which is what we talked about in the Burt Reynolds episode. And I think we played the audio for you at the end of that episode, so you could at least hear what was going on. There's 2 more after that to watch called About Pushing the Button. One is with Tom Davis that you probably are familiar with. It was from season 7 in SNL. The other one's just called Pushing the Button. And then there's 2 other after that. So if you watch them, you don't have to, but I found watching that order would be really great. But do me a favor, pause, go watch those for 17, 18 minutes, and then come back. And we have a fantastic discussion with Andy amongst his films and his relationship to Chevy Chase and SNL in general. And it's Michael O'Donoghue.
And his fascinating career, it turns out, that he has outside of these short films that he did. It's awesome.
It was a fun conversation. I hope you guys will really enjoy it. So please watch the films and give it a listen.
Well, Andy Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. This is a pleasure for us. We're really excited to talk to you. We like to start every episode with the same question. When did you first hear of Saturday Night Live?
I first heard about Saturday Night Live before you did, because it was several months before it went on the air when Chevy Chase came over. And I remember we were at the beach somewhere, and he said, I have this new show I'm doing, and it's going to be really great. And he described it in some detail. He described Andy Kaufman and what Andy Kaufman was going to do. He described the kind of jokes they were going to do. And I was so excited. I couldn't even believe it. And then, several months later, this must have been, I remember this being summer. I could be a little bit off, but somewhere in the summer. So not that many months later, I turned on the TV and watched it, and just blew my mind.
So the reason we wanted to talk to you is we recently watched the Burt Reynolds episode, which your short film is a part of, Street Scene, which we then connected the dots, as we said. You had a piece in Mondo video. So I'm just curious, how did you guys come up with the idea for these videos, and when did you start making, or I should say short films, and when did you start making them?
Well, it was sort of 2 tracks for me. First, as I alluded to a moment ago, I've known Chevy Chase for a long time, way, way before he was on SNL for years. And he said to me, you should make short films for this show. Once the show started and I saw him, he said, you should come up with a short film, which I was, over the moon about. And I came up with a couple of ideas. In fact, I actually made a little less than 1 minute kind of jokey film, which he didn't feel was right for the show. But about 3 years later, my friend Ernie Facilius and I came up with this idea for the film, which ended up in Mondo Video. And we didn't make it. Well, let me think about this. I can't remember if this is true. I think he'd been approached by O'Donoghue to present an idea for a short film for Mondo Video. So he and I made Armageddon, which is, I'll just describe it. It's a 3-ish minute, I think 2.5 minute film, which appears to be a street scene in Fisherman's Wharf, as it turns out. And the director off screen is directing everybody and everything that's happening, directing helicopters, birds, taxis, crowds of people, cars. But in fact, you start to realize about 20 or 30 seconds in, wait a minute, this director was not present. And these are just things that are randomly happening on their own. And then, by the way, there's one little twist at the end, which is that at the 2.5-minute mark, Ernie, my co-filmmaker, dressed as a director, walks with a big, loud megaphone into the set and screams at everyone and says, "Stop!" And everyone stops because that's what people do when somebody yells at them. But on the soundtrack, all you hear is "Okay, cut," and it looks like all the actors are just calmly stopping, like they're being paid to do so. So we presented it to O'Donoghue, and O'Donoghue loved it and immediately accepted it. And then we were in this little negotiation about being paid, which we did okay with, and it was part of the show. We were very excited about it. So that was 1979, although that film didn't go very far. As it turns out, it did not air on network television, and it had an extremely brief, or rather small, distribution in theaters. But then I thought about it, and I went, wait, I should do the inverse. I should make a movie in which something huge is actually going to happen that's inconceivable to the audience while they're watching it, and surprise them when it actually does. So I sort of made a reverse Armageddon, which I called Street Scene. And in my head, I figured out that the biggest thing I could do would be a building demolition.
Yeah,
a controlled demolition, which somebody knows to the second when it's going to happen. As long as I know that, I can make this movie. So I started doing research. Like, where does this happen? How often? Where? I had no budget. It was just an idea in my head. So I remember going to the Yellow Pages and calling demolition companies, and they would say, no, there's only one company in America that does this, and it's controlled demolition in Maryland, the Loiseau family, and that's who you have to talk to. So I went, okay. So I called the Loiseau family. I said, do you have any demolitions coming? And they basically said, do you have $100,000? And I said, no. And they said, well, when you do, come back and we'll talk to you. And that was the end of the conversation. They had no interest in working with me. And I went, okay, I got to find another company. This is before the internet, so finding these things was pretty hard. But I found there was another guy named Jim Reedike in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't remember exactly how I found him, but through a bunch of phone calls, basically, to demolition experts. And I called him and he said, yeah, I'm going to blow a building up in downtown Tulsa in 6 weeks. So I said, okay, I'm there. And I wrote I didn't actually write a complete script, but I had a basic idea in my head of that I was going to have the same thing, a street scene with a slate and people walking around doing mundane things. And then suddenly out of nowhere, this huge building blows up, and it'll be because the director asked for it capriciously in the middle of the film. Like, he just came up with the idea we should blow the building up. So I had when I say I had no money, I can't emphasize what my budget was. It was me, a tripod, a camera, a slate, and a plane ticket to Tulsa. That was pretty much it. And when I got there was a big coincidence, which is that a friend of mine, Doug Claiborne, was literally that weekend opening a film he had produced, which is The Black Stallion, a Coppola production, in Tulsa. And so I knew he'd be there. So I thought, well, this is great. And then I learned, people said, you're not going to find the demolition happens whenever they blow buildings up. They do it at 7 a.m. on Sunday. This is something you should know. It's always just after sunrise on a Sunday to minimize the number of people, keep the crowds down. They said, you will not find people randomly walking around downtown Tulsa at that time. There's going to be nobody there. So you're going to have to bring in extras and make them look like they're randomly walking around. So this is a problem because I don't live in Tulsa, but Doug said, look, I'm going to have a screening Saturday night. I'm going to make an announcement to the 1,000 people. If you want to be in a movie, show up at 6:30 in the
Are
morning
you serious?
at this street corner, and you can do it. So at 6:30 in the morning, about 8 people showed up who I gave names to, in the final film. And Doug was there. He's at the time was an assistant director. This is his bread and butter,
Yeah.
how to make people walk around and look like they're naturally in the background of a scene. So he and I worked out how to use these people. Somebody would get in a car, somebody get out of a car, somebody would cross the street, somebody would be walking a dog, whatever, all these different things. It made it all look very, very real.
Yes, very real.
and Jim Reedike, the demolition expert, gave me a walkie-talkie, and here's all he said. He said, it's going to happen at 7, give or take a couple minutes, but don't worry, you're going to hear countdowns continuously up to that time. There's going to be a half-hour countdown, a 15-minute countdown, and then when we get close, it's going to really be a serious countdown, starting in about 2 minutes, if I recall. So Doug and I worked out that I think it was at 90 seconds before the demolition, that was when we would start rolling. That would be basically, that's when the action started. And we're getting closer, and we're practicing, and we have the luxury of actually doing a few run-throughs with these actors. And what happens is we get to about 3 minutes, and he says, "Wait, there's a technical problem. Hold off. There's a delay." I went, "Okay." So I put the walkie-talkie down. We do some more run-throughs. We come back. "What's going on?" Jim says, "Don't worry, I'll tell you when it's going to happen." And then this goes on we're like 15 minutes in doing all these run-throughs. And then I pick up the walkie-talkie and I said, "Jim, what's happening?" And he goes, "You didn't get the signal?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "We're going." And there's like nothing. I said, "Jim, when are we going?" And he goes, 90 seconds. And I said, "Okay, action."
God.
And everyone looks at me like, "What?" And I said, "Action." I'm like, let me just stop here for a moment. If I hadn't picked up the walkie-talkie at that moment, I would have looked up and seen the building blow up with no camera rolling.
My God.
Like, this was absolutely going to happen. But I happened to get it at exactly the right moment. So the rather surprised actors all sort of did what we said we would do. And there were 2 of them whose job was, they had the least enviable job. I had these 2 guys, if you see the film, you'll notice this, who have to walk away from the demolition.
The hard hat guys.
Camera, and not turn around and look at it. Like, they hear this incredible explosion and they just walk very slowly to the camera as if nothing's happening, because that's what they were told to do, which kind of helped sell the absurdity of the scene. Like, how could somebody just keep doing that? But they did a great job, those 2 guys, and we got the shot.
I was so curious. That's the one thing I really wanted to ask, aside from the logistics of it, was how many people were planted, because you totally noticed the 2 hard hat guys who stand there and talk the entire time and walk away from it. And I was like, those guys had to be planted.
Right.
So everybody else was planted?
It's possible. I can't remember if there's anyone that wasn't planted.
Oh my God.
But anyone you see was planted.
Okay.
And by the way, let me just go back and say that absolutely was not what I had in mind when I envisioned the shot. If Doug hadn't been there and made this announcement and gotten me 8 free unpaid actors, this thing wouldn't have worked very well. There were a lot of things that could have gone wrong. A, not having enough people. B, missing the shot because Jim Reedike didn't give me the right signal at the right time.
I look, credit to you, because the way in which you see these people on the street, it really looks very natural, and just kind of like you planted a camera because you knew this building was going to collapse, right, and this is just what was happening. And it's wonderful. Like, the way it comes across is so tremendous.
Oh, good.
And the payoff at the end when the director's like, "You have that building in the shot? No, lose that building." And you're like, "We're on it." It's perfect. It really works so well.
And that's me at the end walking out with my arms up in the air, looking. I was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and again, we didn't record any sound during it. Nothing. It was just, the entire thing was written after the fact.
It's amazing.
But there were so many things that could have gone wrong. Like when I think about it today, the idea of trying to make a movie like that with no backup. I didn't even have an assistant. I had nothing. Except for Doug Claiborne, who saved my ass completely,
and just happened to be there. That's the beauty of this. That's great. in
in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like,
Right.
it's not like a place I'm connected to in any way, but he was. It's his hometown. So he had this big benefit screening the Saturday night before of The Black Stallion, which was about to open.
So how did you get it then to SNL, since Chevy's been off the show for a while? So how did you get that actually on the show?
Excellent question. Yeah, now Chevy was no longer involved, but I did have a connection through O'Donoghue because O'Donoghue had bought Armageddon. So I went to him and said, I have another film I want to show. So he said, well, I'll try to get it to Lorne. And I remember exactly how it went. It's this famous thing. Every Lorne story begins with the same thing. Waiting outside his office, an appointment is an appointment. Oh, yes, come, you're going to show the film to Lorne? Yes, come at 1:00 or whatever. Sitting interminable hours. And I have, again, this isn't video, this is film. I have this film projector, 60 millimeter projector in the open office, in the open area outside his office. And he finally comes over and I said, oh, hi, Lorne, how you doing? Blah, blah. And I show the film and he says, great, thank you. And walks away. And I have no idea whether he wants it, whether he liked it, sort of Sphinx-like. He seemed to enjoy it, but that's all I could say. And then a couple of days later, I heard from them saying, yes, we want it for the show. And I was just over the moon. So then what happens with films like this, because remember this case, let's just reiterate, this is an unsolicited film that I, presented to them. It doesn't include the cast. It wasn't written by any of the writers. And they used to take films like this. But what that means is it's unconnected to any particular show. So what happens is they tend to use it as not filler, but they put it in where it fits. So they'll say, we're going to try it for, let's say it ended up on April 12th. I probably went to a couple of different shows where they said they might show it and then didn't. And then finally, at one point, it made air. And it was a very exciting night. Sure. The other thing, I have to tell you another funny story. There's a slight change in the dialogue in the film. They said, you have to bring it to the censor. This is less than a week before it aired. You have to bring it to the censor. I said, I don't think there's going to be anything in this that the censor is going to care about. They said, well, the censor has to see everything. Bill Clotsworthy, the name you might have heard before. So I go to this little tiny office, Bill Clotsworthy's office, and I sit down across the desk from him, and the film is on a film projector in another part of the building. And he makes a phone call and he says, okay, roll it. And he's looking at this monitor watching the film. A few seconds in, the phone rings and he's on the phone talking, and the thing blows up and he appears to not even see it. Like, he doesn't laugh. He's having a conversation with somebody. He doesn't get the joke. And when it's over, he goes, okay, well, we can't show that on Saturday Night Live or on NBC anywhere. And I went, ha, and I stood up and he goes, no, really, we couldn't possibly show that. And I said, wait, you're serious? And he goes, yeah. I said, why? And he said, because there's a line "for Christ's sakes" in it. And that has never appeared on NBC and it never will. And I went, oh, right. I guess I hadn't thought of that. So he said, you're going to have to remove that line. So I did. I had to go to a new film mix in an emergency and add a little bit of dialogue and move pieces around and remix it. And we got it to pass muster. But I don't know how he even heard it, given that he didn't even seem to be looking at the movie, and he was on the phone during most of it. He was able to catch that, but he didn't care about the joke at all.
That must have been so stressful for you in that moment of just, oh crap.
Oh my God. I mean, I wasn't sure how to, when he first said it, it's like, the movie's done. Like, what am I going to do? But then I thought about it and went, okay, I had alternate lines. And so what happens is the way it used to go, he exploded in rage when he saw it, like the guy had blown the wrong building up or something. And this time he just says, in the final version that you've seen, he says, okay, good. A wild line I had that I hadn't used and put it in there. So anyway, that was another almost killed the project moment.
Wow. So you end up doing a series of these, what you call disaster films, right?
and quite a few that were not on SNL. I did some for Sesame Street that had buildings blowing up in them. I did some that appeared on HBO and Showtime, short films. I made maybe half a dozen. I put together recently, I didn't mention this to you guys, a YouTube channel called Andy Aaron Disaster
Yeah.
Films.
No, we saw them.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah, we watched it.
We watched all of those.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
They're
Okay.
great.
Yeah, there's at least half a dozen of them.
Yeah, and I think most people know this one. And another one, I don't know, you probably know better, but is the one most well known you have is the one with Tom Davis that was in season 7.
Yeah. So that one, that was a year later. I made one called Push Button to Cross Street.
Yeah.
Where I went and met with Al Franken and Tom Davis and said we should do one of these, and they were very excited about it. And we first came up with a very ambitious script that they'd written, and I decided it was a little too ambitious. I said, I just don't think we can do that much action and time it with a building blowing up. So then they went, okay, let's just do this. Let's just do one. And with the one that we finally ended up with, which is just basically there's 2 buttons on a telephone pole. One of them says push button to cross street, something people have seen many times. And the camera tilts up to reveal a second button that says push button to explode building. And the joke is that 2 people come and they, this, 3-part joke. The first 2 push the correct button, they cross the street. The third is Tom Davis. He doesn't look, he pushes the wrong button and blows the building up right next to him. And that film has shown a lot. It showed in the 40th anniversary show.
Yeah.
It showed in a special they did on Shorts, and it's repeated many times. I thought it might even appear in the 50th show, but they didn't end up doing much old stuff. They did mostly new stuff on that. But so we came up with that one. It was much simpler because I said, look, when you're trying to time all the stuff with the building blowing up, unless I have a big crew, I can't start getting into a complicated dialogue situation with lots and lots of beats, and then have to also make sure it synchronizes perfectly with the building. So it's a much simpler joke, and I thought it really worked perfectly.
Did that come before or after the other push button short you did? Because that one does have a lot of dialogue. That one is one where it's 2 guys talking.
Actually, you're right.
And also, I gotta say, the arc of the films in general, right, from the very first one, which is all just captured footage with the voiceover track put over, to the second one that we just talked about, Street Scene, that was on SNL, to then these ones where you have guys pushing an actual button that has to time out with the building going
Actually,
down.
it's true.
It's amazing watching. And then which I assume are the last 2 that you did, the Riveter and the Cape Canaveral. It's like a flip on the idea where the guys missed the event. And it's all about missing the proper event. So just watching the arc of all of these films together was really fun. So anyway, I'm sorry. Was this before or after the one with the 2 guys?
This one was before. So this is Push Button to Cross Street was the one I just described with Tom Davis. Pushing the button, I'm almost certain, was just right after that.
Okay.
I remember they were shot not far apart in time, like in the same year, but I'm pretty sure Pushing the Button was later. Oh yeah, by the way, one more thing. Each film has a story about how it almost went wrong.
Oh, I'm sure.
So in Push Button to Cross Street, this time I went, okay, I have an SNL actor here. This is going to go on SNL. I got a really good crew and a really good camera, but that doesn't mean it didn't break. So what happened is about 10 minutes before the appointed explosion, the cameraman realized that the camera wasn't working. It was a 16 millimeter eclair, and it stopped. And he didn't want to tell me because he said, what good is it? He's continued to try to fix it. He said, if I tell the director, I'm going to just freak him out. So he never mentioned it. But he said, basically from 10 minutes before until 30 seconds before, it didn't work. And he just kept messing with it, plugging the cable in, trying different things, trying a new cable. And he said he finally got it to work just before it happened, and revealed this to me after it. So the whole thing, same thing, the whole thing could have happened. And it's like, oh, that was nice, except we didn't have a camera. And I didn't have a budget to get 2 cameras, which would have been nice. But luck was with me. And that was in Newark. And it was a huge, really impressive stone building that just did not look like it was going to get blown up. Yeah, by the way, another thing I should mention is earlier I had said that CDI, Controlled Demolition in Maryland, blew me off when I first contacted them. Well, they saw street scene, and they loved it. So when I called them again, they were like, "We want to work with you. We love that movie." So they did the one in Newark.
Okay.
They were like my best friend at that point. Like,
Did you say, do you have $100,000?
Yeah. I recognized that name in the credits when you said it. When you were telling that story that they blew you off, I was like, but I thought I saw that name.
Yeah. No, after the first film, which was Jim Reedike in Tulsa, he was a local demolition guy. I didn't work with him again. Everything else was done with Controlled Demolition.
And how did you get the Tom Davis one on? Because that was season 7 after they all left.
Oh, well, that was like, a sanctioned movie. I mean, sort of. Let's put it this way: I had an inside track. I mean, Tom was there, and SNL did not pay for that movie. I did, but it was still done independently. But I had Tom there, and he was on the cast. And it was a funny movie, so like we were a shoo-in.
The Live from Cape Canaveral short is great. The actor in that is tremendous. I think he does a really great job of just portraying this TV reporter who has a bit of a temper and wants to get Walter Cronkite's attention.
Right, sort of fatuous, kind of full of himself character, like more interested in himself than in the news report that that he's doing. But yeah, he was fantastic. So that was, one, a friend of mine produced that with me, and we had a crew of 3, I think 3 of us went to Cape Canaveral. By the way, I want you to think about this. I did not tell the people at NASA I was making a comedy film. I said, I'm making a documentary about space travel, about rockets. So that's how I got in. And, they asked me a lot of questions, and I had to lie and say that I was, making this documentary. And but once I was there, it was fine. That one, nothing went wrong technically with that one, except that not long after the Challenger explosion happened. And so I kept it on the shelf for literally years before I tried to even show it to anybody, because it was so unfunny.
Yeah.
You're right.
Once that happened,
right.
It might be hard to quite recreate that now, but you could not show that movie to somebody. I remember, a matter of fact, I literally sent it to some network, I forget where, some cable company or something, and said, "You're going to get a package from me. I want you to send it right back to me. Do not open it."
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't want anyone to see, it would have been in bad taste. Right. The timing couldn't have been worse. Let's put it that way. And then after a few years, I went, okay, I can show this now. It's time has passed. And it's not the first thing you think about when you see it. But let's see. Then the Riveter, which is made around that same time, same thing. I told, I did research about ship launches. I started to say, well, what are some other giant things that happen that are predictable to within a minute of when they're going to happen, where I could write a script around it. My friend Steve Radlauer and I wrote this script, and was sort of based on Bob and Ray's Cranberry Story, in which the Bob and I'll just recreate the Cranberry Story is a classic comedy bit where somebody interviews a guy about his cranberry farm, and they have an incredibly mundane, boring conversation, but in the background you hear clearly all this sirens going off, there are gunshots, all these things are happening, but the reporter is immune to any of this. He just wants to hear the boring story about cranberries. So we wanted a reporter to interview a guy about the ship, about the most uninteresting parts of the ship, and then the ship launches and goes into the water during it, and neither of them sort of know how to handle this. So same thing. I said to the shipbuilding company, I'm making a documentary about ships, and I had to convince them that this was this thing. It might be on HBO and all, and I made up this whole lie. And they said, okay, we'll get you a press pass. So yeah, the way the film unfolds is that a reporter seems to sort of catch a man on the street in the form of a riveter who's working on the ship, and the ship is right behind them, and he starts asking him really stupid questions about it. Or actually, The reporter's not so stupid. It's
Right.
the riveter
Yeah.
is an idiot and has no sense of like the import of what he's doing or why it's important or anything. He's just like the least interesting person you could interview. So, okay. So here's the thing about this one. I cast the reporter, Alan Havey, who's gone on to do lots of great things. He's in Billions, the HBO show, and he had his own talk show. He's done a lot of stuff since then. But I didn't cast the riveter. Had somebody in mind who couldn't do it. I forget who that was. And literally about 48 hours before I cast him, that's Frankie Pace. And I said, okay, so we have a flight at 6. Must have been at 5 or 6 in the morning out of Newark. You have to be on it. And he said, well, I have a gig that night before and it won't be done till 2. And I said, Frankie, you can't do that. And he goes, well, I can't get out of it. So I said, okay, when you're done, come to my apartment and go to sleep on my couch. And I'm going to wake you 2 hours later and we're going to go to the airport. So he did. So we meet downstairs, Alan Havey, Frankie Pace, my friend Jefferson Miller, who shot it. I can't remember who else, maybe Steve Radlauer, the writer. And we all take a taxi to Newark. We get in the plane and they said, sorry. And by the way, it's incredibly tight timing. We were going to land in Maine, get in a car, race to the location, and just make it. And they said, sorry, the plane is delayed. We're like, oh, no. And then we're sitting on the plane just sweating. I'm looking at my watch, calculating. I said, at what point are we going to be so late that I'm going to just spend all this money flying people here and we're not going to possibly make it? And so I said, look, once it gets to the time X, we're all going to get up and say, we have to leave. Just before time X, and I mean just before, they said, okay, we're taking off. So I said, Frankie, let's do your lines. And we start running his lines. He hasn't remembered them at all. He's like really, really having trouble. And I'm like, oh my God. So during the whole flight, Havey is really a professional. He's memorized his lines quite well. But Frankie, this isn't something he's done. He's a stand-up and he just hasn't, ever had the experience of learning a 2.5 minute script. So we go through it over and over and over again. And I said, when the plane lands, we were going to race off the plane. We were going to get in the car. We were going to drive above the speed limit. We are not going to park legally. We're going to get there. We're going to start rolling. And so this is pretty much what happens. We left the car in front of this arena or whatever, this huge event on the dock where there were thousands and thousands of people. And the Admiral of the Navy, Admiral Zumwalt, was giving a speech. We run to this location that we had already identified where they made a little stand for us so that we could be above the crowd. And we start putting together the scene. And like people are all looking at us like, who are those guys? And this is a very serious, solemn occasion when they're about to launch a ship. And this like ragtag crew comes running in. And we kind of like practice the thing. And we say, okay, we have like 2 minutes to go. And we make it. And but here's what happens is Frankie panics, completely does not remember his lines. Like the script that we wrote, word for word, is completely different than what you saw on air. What happened was that Frankie sort of freaked out, and as I recall it, and remembered sort of bits of what he had to say. But Alan is, if you watch it again, now that I'm telling you this, Alan is feeding him lines. Yeah. He's saying, don't you do something, aren't you a riveter? Oh yeah, I'm a riveter, and I'm watching going, oh my God, I can't believe it. This is a disaster. But when I listened to it later, I went, oh, actually, it's really great.
It kind of works.
He was genuinely nervous in like a proper way. And Alan had this sort of gravitas of a news reporter that, appropriately, and pulled the whole thing together. So even though it wasn't exactly the script I'd written, they kind of improvised a wonderful alternative, which I think might have been better than what we wrote.
Was he supposed to know the ship terms like starboard and deck? Because that's the funniest part when he says like, I was over there working on the right side, and Alan's like, starboard? You mean starboard? Starboard side.
No, that was in the original script. That was part of the joke. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Okay.
That was really
just
funny.
hearing you talk, I was wondering, like, maybe he didn't know any of his lines, and that's where all that came from.
That was for real.
Okay.
But there were other things that Frankie was supposed to say that he didn't say, or that he sort of said a little bit wrong or whatever. But it sort of didn't matter. I mean, the basic gestalt of it, which is like, I'm an idiot that doesn't know very much, and I'm a newscaster who can make everything smooth. That all kind of works, which is what really matters.
Well, I think it totally pays off, and the reporter does a great job when he's like, well, that's not a rivet. And he's like, what? And he's like, well, this is a rivet. This is I forget what he said, like an Idaho rivet or whatever it is.
He pulls it out of his pocket.
It works so well
This ridiculous idea. Well, that was also part of the Cranberry story in the Bob and Ray thing. The reporter ends up knowing more about the subject than the interviewee. That's part of the joke also.
Yeah.
It's like, the reporter in the Cranberry story knows all about cranberries, and the farmer doesn't really know what they do. He just knows he grows them.
Yeah, because doesn't he offer up stuff like you could make cranberry dessert or cranberry? Like,
yes, that's right.
Right.
Oh,
yeah. So here it's like the riveter just knows I go to work, I do this thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know where I am. I don't know why I'm doing it. They pay me.
And his surprise at the end where he's like, that ship's not done.
That ship's not finished.
That's right.
I don't know where it's going.
I really enjoyed watching all of these films. They are all very, they're very tight and very funny and well done. And they're great.
Wow, thank you.
They're great on their own, but I gotta say, watching them in order or semi in order is so rewarding. Like I said, watching the found footage and how they just evolve from the next one to the next one to there. So like when you watch Push the Button and it's the two guys standing there next to a thing that says push this button. If you've already seen Street Scene and you know a building collapses, you know where it's going. So you're watching being like, I'm watching going, how in the hell are they going to time this out that this guy is going to slap that button the exact time the building falls down? Just like the Tom Davis one. I'm like, how do you do it? And then you get to the Cape Canaveral short film and I'm like, okay, what in the hell is this going to be?
Yeah.
How are they going to do a rocket launch? And then watching the whole thing being about them missing it, it's just so funny.
It really is.
Yeah, like I said, we said it in the intro to everybody. Really encourage you to watch them in order because you enjoy them so much more. But they do, like Gary said, on their own also fantastic.
Oh, good. So it's Andy Aaron Disaster Films channel. And I only put that together fairly recently, actually. I haven't really publicized it yet.
We'll put a link in the show notes so that folks can find it. It's great.
Good. Okay. Then I ended up making 2 or 3 films for Sesame Street, which included things blowing up.
Oh, that's great.
Because they saw it and loved it and contacted me. I made one about Up and Down, and there was a math one I did for a show, for a children's television workshop math show, in which a building blows up. They talk about it's about counting the different stories of a building, and there's a whole counting thing, and then it blows up. So yeah, I've gotten to be like friends with these guys at Controlled Demolition.
That's great.
Actually, in one of them, in the math one, the building was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and it was right next to I-95, the huge highway from like New York to Boston. And they knew that they had to shut the highway down for about 2 minutes because if they didn't, any driver who was right next to the explosion, even if they were technically safe, could easily have crashed from shock seeing it. So so the same thing. I had a walkie-talkie, and he said, you're going to hear us. We're going to shut the highway down. Then you're going to hear a 3-minute countdown, and then we're going to hear, et cetera, et cetera. Except this time I was pretty familiar with all this, and I had it near me all the time, and I didn't have to do any talking. I just had to listen and know when the 2-minute time came. So he goes, he says, okay, shut the highway, and he says 3 minutes, and then he says going to each crew. Crew 1, are you good? Yes. Crew 2, are you good? These are the demolition crew, people who are stationed around. And then he says, Andy, are you good? And I'm like what? Like, why? He's talking to me. And he goes, Andy, are you good? And I was like not prepared to answer, and so I sort of was quiet. I'm going to stay off the air. And he goes, Andy. I went, oh, I'm good. He goes, okay, good. And then later he said, He said, when I didn't hear from you, I was totally going to shut the production down and just keep the highway closed until you told me your camera
my God.
was ready.
That's
He
great.
said I had a whole story made up about some fake technical problem. He said I wasn't going to blow a building up if you weren't ready. So
wow, that's cool.
That's awesome.
So it turned out everything worked out. There was no delay or anything, but like if I hadn't answered, he was prepared to keep the highway shut for another 5 minutes. But that one went off perfectly.
Wow. So you've done a lot of these films now. You've watched a lot of buildings collapse, which is awesome.
Yeah, I've probably watched 8 different buildings collapse. It's I have to say, it's really a thrill. It's totally worth going to see if you can.
I'm sure.
One of the things that's surprising each time is that the sequence of events, just as I'm referring just to your experience, not to a movie. First, you see little flashes that look like firecrackers, look like nothing. And then a few seconds later, someone punches you in the chest because the explosion has incredible shockwave. So you suddenly feel boom, boom. There's like a sequence, not one, but a sequence of usually quite a number of boom, 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 boom. And it feels like someone's like slamming you, and still nothing has happened. The building is intact, and then like a second later, it starts to fall.
Oh wow!
So basically, what happens is you're seeing the demolition, you're seeing the explosives go, you're hearing them 2 seconds later because you're some distance away, and then there's a little like cartoon effect of like, oh, the building is no longer being held up, and then the last thing that happens is it falls, which, by the way, makes it a little bit hard to synchronize to a film because there's these, at what point should the button be hit? It's not. If you heard the real soundtrack, it's pretty different than what you see in the movie.
Wow.
Because you have to kind of like make, you have to work with the visuals, not with the sound. But anyway, yeah. So it's really a thrill to see these things. I've also witnessed one or two just for fun.
That's cool.
Speaking of thrill, the last thing we wanted to ask you was you wrote for the Chevy Chase Show, right?
Yeah.
Love to hear that.
That was a thrill.
That was a thrill. How did you get? I mean, obviously, I know you knew Chevy from back in the day, but how did you end up?
Well, actually,
that's kind of.
Can we actually go back? So you said you knew Chevy for a long time. How did you know Chevy?
I knew Chevy because he was one of my brother's best friends at Bard College.
Oh.
And so when I was in high school and my brother would come home from school, he sometimes brought Chevy. That's how I met him. And he was hilariously funny. Like really, like I didn't know there were people like that. And so, yeah, I just absolutely loved seeing him. And he had a show in New York City at one point called Channel 1.
Yeah.
Which consisted of it just seems sort of funny now, a little theater on East 4th Street where there were just monitors around this facing different directions from the center. It was a theater in the round, probably, I don't know, under 100 seats, I'm guessing. And you just watch a TV show. That was it. Like it was, you just look at this monitor, but it was, at the time, really outrageous stuff that nobody ever saw on TV. It would probably seem less outrageous now, but it was very outrageous at the time.
Right.
Although a lot of it, I think, would still hold up, but some of it maybe less so. And I went to that show several times. I used to bring friends there and stuff. So I've known him for really long. And then when he decided to make this ill-fated talk show, he said, "What do you think of working on it?" I was like, "Are you kidding? Of course." So he, had the power to say, "You should hire this guy, me." and I was nominally a writer. I mean, I was a writer, but I was sort of tasked with doing short films.
Okay.
It was a lot of what we did. It was, more than half of what I did because I didn't have the sort of writing chops of the rest of the staff who had mostly written quite a lot of television by that point. But I wrote a bunch of stuff. It was a fun experience, although an ill-fated one as it turns out.
Short-lived, exciting experience.
Yeah. And I think my feeling about it is that it wasn't a good idea to have him be a host. He didn't, it wasn't the right role for him, and that the network brass hadn't thought this through very well, but more important, that they'd hired a producer who just couldn't have been more wrong for this. He didn't really know Chevy's work.
Oh,
I mean, by that time, Chevy had a long career, but this guy barely seemed to understand it.
That's strange.
He had done like old pre-SNL, crappy old 60s and 70s television specials. He produced the Star Wars Christmas special.
Oh my God.
The same person produced the Star Wars Christmas special as the Chevy Chase Show, a little known fact.
Wow.
And so he was just not in touch with like the kind of humor that this was about.
Right.
And the writers were, that we all understood it, but he didn't. So what happened was we'd written a pretty funny show for the first episode, which was on a Tuesday after Labor Day. We had a 3-day weekend, and everybody assumed we're going to be working our asses off all during that 3-day weekend. But on Friday, he said, no, you know what? All the writers take 3 days off. We're like, what? And he said, you have a good script. We're good. Just relax. So we come in on Tuesday morning, and he said, I wrote a new script, and that's what we're going to use. And that's when we all learned that Goldie Hawn was coming and was going to pretend to fall on it and throw a cake at him and all this stuff, or a cake would drop, and all the stuff we'd written was not in the show. He'd written some new stuff that he thought was pretty funny.
That's remarkable.
That's what you saw.
That's a shame.
And then once that happened, it was sort of like, once 20 million or whatever number of million people see a show they really don't like, they don't come back the next night to see, well, did it get any better?
Right.
They say, I'm done. So we're in a bad trajectory from the first show.
Yeah. Well, Andy, this has been great. What have you been doing since the Chevy Chase Show?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. A lot of things. What else did I do? I produced for a couple of years. I produced a live show on the Food Network, which was a talk show with celebrities, which was fun, hosted by Robin Leach.
Oh.
I did that, and I produced a season. I was a senior producer on Michael Moore's TV Nation. Oh. That came shortly after that. We did some great stuff there, and let's see. I ended up leaving that whole world and working at IBM Research as a researcher for the next 20 odd years, where I sort of brought film and TV into the mix at times. The IBM did a big project where we played Jeopardy in 2011. A computer played Jeopardy and beat the 2 world champions. So I made the voice for that computer. Oh, wow. And I did all kinds of other stuff.
That's awesome.
You did tons of sound work, right? Like sound recording. Like if you look on IMDb, you have tons of credits as a sound recorder.
Yeah. Pretty much soon after college, I got hired on Apocalypse Now to do sound. I worked on that for 2 years.
Wait, how are we just hearing Apocalypse Now at this point in the conversation?
Because you didn't ask.
No, it didn't.
So I worked on that for a couple of years. Got hired away to work as assistant sound designer at Lucasfilm, where I worked for Ben Burt doing sound design for the one film we really worked on was something called More American Graffiti, a sequel to American Graffiti that didn't go anywhere, in which I appear as a drummer, as a bass player rather. But I did sound design, recorded tons of stuff for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And then moved to New York and recorded effects for just dozens and dozens of feature films during the 80s.
Wow. You have to tell your people to update your IMDb because it doesn't list any of that.
No, that's in there.
It isn't? The Apocalypse Now? I'm looking at it.
If it's not, I got to fix it.
I'm looking at it right now.
It should be in there.
That's amazing.
As soon as this is over, I'm going to check. I've made corrections to IMDb many times.
It's funny because I was going to ask. I noticed in one of the credits on one of the films, it mentioned Zoetrope. I don't know, you did like the editing or the post on Zoetrope. And I was wondering, I was like, oh my, he worked with Zoetrope Films for this? And I was assuming just because you were based out of San Francisco or something and there was a connection somehow.
No, well, I mean, yes, I was in San Francisco, but basically Zoetrope gave me, editing rooms and mixing equipment and stuff. And so, so they were instrumental in, so I give them a credit. And Doug Claiborne, who I mentioned, who produced Black Stallion, was part of Zoetrope.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So basically during all those films we talked about earlier, I was simultaneously doing sound work on a bunch of movies, a bunch of big feature films.
That's awesome.
First San Francisco, then New York, and then I started getting into like producing television, and then later into IBM Research, a complete turn of events.
That's a fascinating career, Andy.
It is.
It's really cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great talking to you about this. Like I said, I really enjoyed watching all of your disaster films on YouTube. We'll put a link up for that because they're so much fun to watch.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah. And it's so impressive the way you pull these all off. It's great. Thank you for sharing your stories with us.
Well, it was fun talking about them. Thanks for contacting me.
You got it.
Is there anything else you want to plug other than the YouTube channel?
I think that's about it for now.
Thanks so much, Andy. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That was a great conversation with Andy, Aaron, Brad. I really enjoyed talking to him. So nice.
I can't believe we went 45 minutes before Apocalypse Now came up. Like, where did that come from?
Oh, that was great. And you're right. It's not on his IMDb, or it wasn't at the time of recording.
Yeah.
He updates that. But yeah, he was great. And hearing all of the stories about how things almost didn't happen because, when you're timing it with a building demolition, there's no room for error. It's crazy.
We said it in the intro, but if you didn't listen to us and now you've heard the stories, please go out and check his videos online, YouTube, Andy Aaron Disaster Films. You can see all the things we're talking about. They're all very short. I think the longest one's like 3 minutes. So go check them out. They're so much fun. And we hope you guys enjoyed this as much as we did because this was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
And have a pleasant tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. Look for us on social media everywhere at NR4PT Project. The Not Ready for Primetime Project team includes Brad Robinson and Gary Seath. Please remember to rate and review wherever you watch and or listen to the show. Thanks for listening. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Brad, why do you do this? Do you do this to hurt us?